kind of a homecoming of sorts. The Godfather we haven't even seen since April. And yes, I call it Victor's the Godfather. He gave birth to this organization. This is his idea. So if you look past that 1,000-yard stare, the origin's in there somewhere. We were going to invite two of the greatest legal minds who has ever produced, but they said no. So we got Alex and Victor, who are good legal minds, but they're also two of the bravest men that you'll ever talk to. Heroes and veterans, they've served to help protect our freedom. They've been overseas, they know what to do, and they know how to get the job done. Now, we'll start with Alex. I asked Alex the other day what made him join the Army, and he told me, well, his head wouldn't fit in a jar, so he had the Army in. I'll give you a little bit of his background. This is too long, so I'm actually going to have to read a little bit. He joined the Army National Guard in November 2001, right after the 9/11 attacks. Finished his degree at the University of Illinois, and was commissioned as an officer and assigned to the infantry. He worked his way through the ranks, and while attached to the 106th Cavalry, deployed to Afghanistan in 2008 to help the Afghan police develop their training and get themselves ready for the day that we're not there again. And then, why he did it, I have no idea, but this lunatic, he comes back 2 weeks after, outside of coming back from Afghanistan, he started at Cooley. It took 2 whole weeks, so if you think your summer break was short, it is not. He did his degree here at Cooley in the 2-year, 15-credit year-round program, which is nuts. And he started and finished on the dean's list for the entire time. So this is not just an average student. And yes, I'm embarrassing the hell out of him, that's okay. He was accepted to law review, where he served as one of the associate editors, did his externship with the Michigan Army National Guard JAG office. He was admitted to corporate law and finance degree joint program, and he's working on his LLM right now, which is why you still see him around the building. He's been awarded 1 certificate of merit for immigration law, and is graduating in the top 15% of the class tomorrow. That should have been enough to drive the average person insane, right? But he still did more. He served the community as an assistant Boy Scout leader for Troop 96 in Williamston. He's a Sunday school teacher. And during this whole thing, he's got a wife and kids at home. How they still recognize him, I still don't know either. He's got 2 kids and a possibly patient wife. And I'll leave the rest of the story to him. Now, we'll leave the floor to the smartest grunt I've ever met. That was you, Gary.
Thank you. I came back here because I have these note cards. I think it looked weird if I was out there with note cards in my hand. But first, I'd like to thank Dan for that wonderful introduction. And the Military Veteran Law School Association, I want to thank this group that I've been able to be a part of while I was here. Obviously, I want to thank Cooley for all that they were able to give me. And then I thank you for being here today to hear a little bit about what we went through. The great thing about this event is that it's a true story. And I'm just grateful that I could be here to share part of my story with you. So how did I survive Cooley? That's a very good question. It's a very big question. When I was thinking about the material as I was preparing to come here today, 2 years worth of details came flooding to my mind, and I wasn't sure that I'd be able to express or describe exactly the key things that helped me be successful. But I remembered a quote from Abraham Lincoln. I don't know if many of you know a lot about Abraham Lincoln. Obviously, he was the President of the United States. But for me, he's one of my personal heroes because that man failed much more often than he succeeded. But he was still able to accomplish so much. He said, always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other. I think that pretty much sums up how I feel about my success here at Cooley. I began to think about my resolution. Where did it come from? How did I develop it? What key parts were in it? And I was able to come up with 3 concepts that I think helped me more than anything else. 3 concepts that I'd like to share with you today. The first one is understanding fear. The second one is being dedicated. And the third one is developing a system. Now, these 3 concepts are inherently taught in military training. Many of us here, many people who have experience with the military know, whether it's in the Army and the Army values, or what they use in the Marines or the Navy or any armed forces, you're inherently taught these things because it's part of what we call the mission. Everything in the military is about the mission, getting the mission done. And in order to do that, you have to understand fear, you have to be dedicated, and you have to know how to develop a system. But there's nothing special about these concepts. It's not that you have to serve in the military to understand them. Anybody can learn them, and I know they're taught in professional courses to help businesses and other things. And the starting point is if you just think about it. If you just think about it. If you just think about these concepts for a minute, I guarantee you that if you begin to use them, you can put yourself anywhere you want to be. In the military, it's a matter of survival. And I guess that's why we're going to talk about how we survive law school, right? So I think they're very applicable to an experience at Cooley. So first, understanding fear. When I first got here, I went through orientation. Everybody had to do it. You guys probably remember they separated you out into little groups and you talked about different things. And at one point, they sit you down and they say, "What is your biggest fear?" And I was in a group of, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 people, and the first individual said, "Well, I'm afraid that I'll fail." And the next person is like, "Yeah, I'm afraid I won't make it. I'm afraid I won't be able to do what's necessary. I'm afraid that, I won't be able to pass my class or be too hard." And they all went around very similar things. They got to me, I don't know why I was last, but I was. They looked at me and they're like, "Well, what do you fear?" And I just sat there and I said, "Nothing." Yeah, it was just like that. Silence, eyes about this big. They're like, "What do you mean nothing? What do you mean nothing?" And I was like, "Well, you have to understand, I just came back from a place where if I walked in the wrong area, I would die. There's nothing in law school that I'm afraid of after coming back from that." For me, my mindset at that point in time, failure meant death. That's what vets go through when they're in that type of situation. Thankfully, here in law school, failure does not mean death. It's a beautiful thing. The failure does not mean death. Probably 90% of everything that you do, failure does not mean death. So what I was able to bring to that group and what I realized in that moment is that my perspective on fear had changed. And it was something that I had a little bit more control over than I thought. Fear is a point of view. It's an internal emotion. It all goes on inside here. Now, sure, there are things that happen to us that cause us to feel fear. There are things that we can't control. There are things that we can control. But initially and only inside are we going to have to deal with those feelings. So, I believe that you can actually not feel fear at all. It would take a while and you would have to train yourself. But if you don't believe that you can't even, that you can get to a point where you don't feel fear, you can at least feel and know how to react to it. And that also is completely internal. You can completely control how you react to fear. It's an important part of our warning system. It's natural within our body, but it's not a bad thing. Where it goes bad is where the fear begins to control you instead of you controlling the fear. When the fear causes you to drop this class, not take this professor, or not even try to take that class even though you think it's interesting. Fear begins to control when you avoid certain people because of the way they treated you in the past, or when you just give up because you think you can't do it. That point is the point where you can't allow yourself to get to, and you have complete control over that. I mean, when you're in law school, especially if any of you are first termers, you'll hear all this stuff. They come in and say, don't take 5 classes, it's ridiculous. You're not going to be able to do it. And I mean, they don't necessarily say it in that way, but it comes off that way. Or don't take this professor because he does this. Or, don't take this professor, he only had, he has 80 multiple choice on his exam. Or you're going to deal with all these things. And like I said, you may be able to control it, you may not be able to control it. But what you can control is how you feel about it, how you let it move you in one direction or the other. Now, when they told me that I shouldn't take 5 classes when I got here, I just thought, are there people that have done it in the past? Yeah, lots of people. There's probably a whole number of people that were able to do it. And I was like, well, I'm not that smart, but I mean, I'm guaranteeing that all those people, some of them must be somewhere around my range. I mean, they can't be that far off from my ability and my understanding. And so I was like, well, I'll do it for a term and we'll see how it goes. It worked out, so I kept going, kept doing more. And I just would not let that fear, when they come in right in the front door, deter me from trying. If you can make it at least to that point, then everybody knows you never tried anything. How do we deal with fear? How did the cowardly lion do with the Wizard of Oz? Courage, right? I give him a medal. I'll tell you right now, no one seeks after medals. And having a medal doesn't give you courage. Being an individual, the person that you are, is going to give you that courage. Courage or confidence is a balance of knowledge and experience. If you have a certain base understanding and you have a certain basic experience, you combine those together, and that gives you the internal fortitude to do whatever it is that you set out to do. Knowledge means you got to study. You got to put in the time. I'm sure you've been told this a million times, but it's true. You got to do what's necessary so that you understand what it is you're trying to learn. And experience means practice. Why do we take classes like trial skills, like pre-trial? Why do they have moot court and other extracurricular activities? It's to give you that practice so that you don't feel as nervous, you don't feel that fear controlling you when you're in that situation. To gain that experience, you got to make your opportunities. You could flow through law school and not do anything extra, do just the bare minimum. But what kind of person are you going to be when you graduate? What kind of abilities are you going to have when you're done? Like I said before, sometimes it's just as simple as trying. But if you understand that knowledge and experience creates confidence, and you can defeat fear, and you won't let it control you. I guarantee it. So what does it mean to be dedicated? Number 2. In military life, dedication is everything. It's a way of life in the military. For me, dedication begins with a decision. It's a decision to the 3 C's. A decision to commit, to continue, and to conclude, finish. If you make that decision voluntarily of your own self, and you commit to it, you continue to do that, and you conclude, you'll be surprised by how far you'll go. You'll be surprised by how many things you accomplish. I'm telling you right now, sitting here today, Dan read that nice bio about what I was able to do. I had no clue that that's where I was going when I started. I set some general goals, but every time something came up, I would try and just keep going. I would try, I would continue, I would commit to it, and I would make sure I finished it. Committing means having something to strive for. It means setting some goals. It means knowing where you're going. And I think sometimes people don't think about that. When I started law school, the only thing I wanted to do was I wanted to try to keep it above a 3.0. And when I heard about law review, I wanted to do that. And then after first term, I wanted to try to do it in 2 years. Those are the 3 goals that I started with. And it just exploded from there. Some people are able to do this subconsciously. They don't even have to think about it. It's just part of their internal workings. I need to write it down. I think it helps if you write it down. Those 3 simple goals I wrote down so that I could see them and I could be reminded. And I committed to them. Continuing basically means no matter what you're doing, you don't stop. You just keep going. It's hard, and it only gets harder. And everybody you talk to is going to tell you the same thing. There's no let up. It just keeps going harder and faster until all of a sudden you're at the position where Victor and I are at, and we're just believing, we're starting to can't even believe it. So 2 years went by fast. It went by a lot faster than a year in Afghanistan, I'll tell you that. So you got to take it little by little. You got to understand piece by piece. In concluding, this by itself, in and of itself, if you commit to just finish what you start, you will be able to accomplish so much that you will have, you won't even be the same person anymore. It means that you don't give up. It means that you just simply don't stop until you're done. I took pre-trial, and for you who've taken it or those who have not, it's a pretty intensive class where the bulk of the grade is a brief that you have to turn in. It's supposed to be like 25 pages long. And you're working on it little by little, but you turn it in on a set day. You gotta have it all done, turned in on a set day. And on top of that, they make you do like 5 copies, and you have to turn it in by hand, and it has to be signed, here. And, I mean, there's all these rules. And I just remember the night before, I thought to myself, hey, I got this down. I got it pretty good. I think I'm gonna do all right. So I went to the library, I don't know, probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I just kept reading through it. And I was like, oh, typo there. Reprint that page. Oh, that doesn't sound right. I gotta change that and type that page. Kept going. 5 o'clock in the morning rolls around. The day I have to turn it in. I finally get my 5 things set out. Finally get them put together. And I'm walking to class that starts at 9. I think I took a nap for like 30 minutes. But I show up in the class and my eyes bloodshot, and I'm just like, take it. It's here, it's ready. And the only thing that got me through that was my commitment to finishing that project the best that I could. To actually finishing it, the work, and not giving up the key. I mean, did it suck? Yes. There are very few times that I've had to stay up all night long working on a paper. But I did it, and I just wouldn't let myself go until it was done, until I was satisfied. And I did well in the class. That's what it took. I can guarantee to you that if you dedicate yourself to being here at Cooley, to doing well, then you will. So my last point is developing a system. In the military, everything is spelled out for you. Everything has an AR, it has a regulation, it has, they tell you everything from how to dig a hole in the sand and relieve yourself, how to wipe it, and get rid of the evidence. It's in there, I can tell you that. All that is there. It's a system, a mode of operating, a way to do things. Most people, I don't think, come into law school with that type of plan. I don't think they come in here thinking, oh, well, how am I going to achieve what I want to achieve? I wish I could give you every secret. I wish I knew. But the reality of it is that everybody's system is going to be different. The way I do things may work for some of you. The way I don't do things may work better for you. Everybody has their own